UBS Inside the World of Dirty Money. Part 1. There are places in this world where the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows, where money does not simply change hands, it changes destinies, alliances, and entire nations. This is a story about one of those places, a story about a bank that became more than a bank, a gatekeeper to hidden wealth, invisible empires, and fortunes no one was meant to see. This is the story of UBS, a Swiss giant known for discretion, power, and silence. A financial institution that has served the wealthy elite for more than 160 years and has occasionally walked the thin, cold line between lawful discretion and criminal secrecy. For decades, UBS projected an image of perfect stability, an institution built on smooth stone, old money, and alpine respectability. But behind the marble lobbies and the tailored suits, behind the polite smiles of private bankers trained to say everything and reveal nothing, lay a shadow network of hidden accounts, shell corporations, and financial transactions designed to leave no fingerprints. Money that no government could trace, assets that no court could seize, fortunes that existed in legal twilight. To understand UBS, we must first understand Switzerland itself, a land of mountains, neutrality, and centuries-old banking secrecy. For generations, Switzerland built its identity on being a safe haven, not only from war, but from government scrutiny. In 1934, during the tense years before World War II, Switzerland passed a law that would change global finance forever. The Swiss Banking Act, which made revealing client information a crime punishable by prison. Not a violation, not a fine, a crime. This single decision cemented Switzerland as the world's private vault, a place where kings, dictators, CEOs, and celebrities could hide wealth away from the eyes of their enemies and sometimes their own governments. UBS, formed from the merger of several older institutions, rose to become one of the keystones of this system, a bank that promised absolute protection, absolute silence, absolute loyalty. Clients didn't simply store money at UBS, they stored secrets. Throughout the 20th century, UBS grew alongside a world in turmoil. Wars raged, empires collapsed, currencies rose and fell like tides, and yet UBS remained untouched, its vaults filled with wealth from across the globe. Some of it earned honestly, much of it not. During World War II, Switzerland stayed neutral. But neutrality does not mean innocence. UBS, along with other Swiss banks, accepted money, gold, and assets from various sides of the conflict. Some of it belonged to those fleeing persecution, but some of it belonged to the regimes and corporations fueling the war itself. This was the beginning of UBS's long dance with moral ambiguity, profiting from systems of violence, yet never participating directly, always the custodian, never the culprit, at least not on paper. After the war, global wealth began to change shape. Corporations grew larger, governments expanded taxation, and the wealthy elite sought new ways to protect what they believed was theirs. UBS adapted. Its private bankers became something more than financial advisors. They became architects of secrecy, designing intricate structures of offshore companies, trusts, and coded accounts. Their role was never to ask why a client needed secrecy, only to deliver it. This system catered to everyone: royal families, oil magnates, arms dealers, celebrities, politicians, and occasionally, criminals who needed to move money with no questions asked. By the 1980s and 1990s, UBS had become a sovereign nation of money, with influence stretching from Zurich to London, from New York to Singapore, from Panama to the Cayman Islands. It operated across borders, above national jurisdictions, and within the quiet language of private wealth. Its bankers were trained in subtlety, handwritten notes instead of emails, conversations in hotel lobbies instead of offices, personal phones rather than corporate lines, everything deniable, nothing traceable. But the world was changing. The rise of terrorism, organized crime, and global tax enforcement meant governments were no longer willing to tolerate invisible money. In the early 2000s, the United States launched a campaign to crack open the secretive world of offshore banking. At the center of that campaign was UBS. The United States believed UBS was helping wealthy Americans hide billions in undeclared accounts. Billions that should have been taxed. Billions that were effectively invisible. UBS denied it. They were simply offering wealth management, they claimed. Nothing illegal. But the truth was far more complex. UBS had teams of private bankers who flew into the United States on tourist visas, holding encrypted laptops, unmarked business cards, and instructions to leave no footprints. They met clients in restaurants, art galleries, golf courses, and luxury hotels, never inside UBS branches. They advised clients on how to move funds through shell entities, secret trusts, and indirect transfers so that the money appeared to have no owner. They taught clients how to avoid detection, how to lie carefully on federal disclosure forms, how to wire funds in ways that appeared ordinary. This was not banking. This was financial espionage. For years, it worked. Billions flowed silently through UBS's private banking division, the wealth of American elites, hidden just out of reach of the IRS. But in secrecy, there is always a weakness, not in the system itself, but in the humans who maintain it. In 2005, an American UBS banker named Bradley Birkenfeld came forward with evidence of the bank's role in tax evasion. He described a hidden structure, carefully engineered, intentionally concealed, and highly profitable. His disclosures triggered one of the largest tax investigations in U.S. history. UBS's fortress of secrecy began to crack. In 2009, UBS agreed to pay a $780 million settlement and hand over the names of more than 4,000 American account holders, shattering nearly a century of Swiss banking privacy. This moment marked the beginning of the end of Switzerland's absolute secrecy, and the beginning of UBS's transformation from quiet protector to global financial entity under constant scrutiny. But this was only one chapter, a single fracture in a much larger structure, because UBS did not simply manage wealth. It shaped it, directed it, moved it across borders, industries, and political networks. And where there is movement of money, there is always movement of power. The next stage of UBS's story begins in the heart of Europe, where ancient wealth and modern finance collided in silence. A world of private deals, offshore accounts, and transfer networks that linked oligarchs, corporations, and governments. A world invisible to the public, yet central to everything. This is where the true scale of UBS's influence becomes clear, not through scandal, but through structure. Because money is not merely wealth, it is control, and those who move it shape the world. Part 2. As we move deeper into the world of UBS, we begin to understand that money, especially hidden money, does not simply sit still. It moves, it circulates, it seeks influence, protection, and growth. The true power of UBS was never the vaults in Zurich, Geneva, or Basel. It was the network, a global lattice of private bankers, lawyers, accountants, shell companies, and offshore jurisdictions, every part operating quietly, efficiently, and with a single purpose: to ensure that wealth could be moved across borders without ever being seen. To appreciate the intricacy of this system, we must explore the architecture of offshore finance. Not the simple offshore accounts that newspapers mention, but the complex, layered structures that allow a billionaire's identity to dissolve into paper. A shell company in Panama, a trust in the British Virgin Islands, a foundation in Liechtenstein, a nominee director in Cyprus, a luxury property in London held through 5 layers of corporate masking. The structure is designed like a labyrinth, each corridor leading to another, each door opening to a new alias, each decision carefully made to place the owner one step further away from their wealth. In this labyrinth, UBS, is the guide. Their bankers do not simply open accounts. They construct legal identities. They design financial invisibility. For the wealthy elite, secrecy is not merely a preference. It is protection. Protection from taxes, from lawsuits, from political instability, from public scrutiny, and in some cases, protection from justice. As globalization accelerated in the late 20th century, so did the flow of illicit wealth. Drug cartels in Latin America, oligarchs from the former Soviet Union, corporate embezzlers, corrupt bureaucrats siphoning public funds, arms dealers trading weapons in regions already bleeding from conflict. Money from these sources needed to be laundered, washed clean, so it could enter the legitimate financial world. This is where large global banks, including UBS, entered gray territory. Financial institutions are required to monitor suspicious activity, file internal reports, and report potential laundering. But the reality is far more complex. When a client arrives with billions to invest, banks face a choice: treat them as a risk or treat them as a business opportunity. And in the world of private finance, opportunity often wins. Investigations in the 1990s revealed that UBS was involved in processing transactions linked to accounts controlled by corrupt politicians in Africa and Latin America. Money that had been stolen from public treasuries, funds meant for schools, hospitals, water systems, and infrastructure, was quietly moved into private portfolios. In Romania, former President Nicolae Ceausescu's regime funneled funds through Swiss banks. In Nigeria, General Sani Abacha looted billions from state reserves, some of which passed through Swiss-controlled channels. In Brazil, major corporate bribery networks used private banks to obscure transfers. In each case, UBS denied wrongdoing. They insisted they followed the law, performed due diligence, and complied with regulatory standards. And yet, the money always found a home. This is the paradox of modern finance. Illegal money becomes legal the moment it passes through the right institutions. Banks do not need to touch crime directly. They only need to provide the tools. But the gravity of UBS's influence became fully visible after the collapse of the Soviet Union. As the old USSR dissolved in the early 1990s, state-owned industries, oil, gas, steel, minerals, infrastructure, were privatized with breathtaking speed. Political insiders, businessmen, and organized networks acquired national resources for fractions of their real value. This was the birth of the Russian oligarch class, sudden billionaires, titans of oil, aluminum, and banking, men with vast wealth and uncertain legitimacy. Their biggest problem was not making money. It was protecting it, because wealth earned too quickly can vanish just as fast. Enter UBS. Private bankers traveled to Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kiev, and Almaty. They held quiet meetings in hotel bars, embassy dinners, and private villas. They offered services in relocation, asset protection, corporate structuring, and offshore registration. For oligarchs, UBS did not merely store wealth. It provided a financial identity in the West. London became their showroom, Monaco, their playground, Zurich, their vault, and Washington, their influence. As their money spread, so did their power into media companies, mineral contracts, political parties, and security networks. UBS was not alone in facilitating this era of oligarchic wealth mobility. Other global banks played similar roles: Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, HSBC. But UBS's power was distinct, rooted in its deep experience of secrecy and discretion. Private banking is not advertised on billboards. It is whispered, introduced through personal connections, maintained through loyalty. No public brochures, no mass market slogans, only private invitations. But for every billionaire welcomed into the UBS ecosystem, there were risks, political risks, legal risks, geopolitical risks. And as new wealth flowed in from Russia, Central Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the pressure on UBS grew. Regulators began asking questions. Journalists began investigating. Governments wanted to know where wealth was moving and who was directing it. UBS responded as it always had, quietly, strategically, and with carefully chosen disclosures. But cracks were forming. In 2014, the Swiss leaks scandal broke, leaking confidential files related to hidden accounts. In 2015, the Panama Papers revealed offshore structures used to hide wealth. In 2022, the Swiss secrets leak exposed thousands of accounts linked to dictators, traffickers, and criminals. Each leak chipped away at the image of the silent Swiss guardian. Yet UBS remained standing. Because secrecy was no longer just about hiding money, it had evolved. Today, secrecy in finance is not maintained through silence. It is maintained through complexity. Where once anonymity came from locked vaults and numbered accounts, now it comes from legal opacity, layers of companies, partnerships, and digitally scattered ownership trails that require international legal cooperation to unravel. The world chased secrecy, secrecy adapted, and UBS adapted with it. As global investigators uncovered hidden accounts, UBS emphasized transparency and reform. Compliance departments expanded, reporting structures modernized. New ethical standards were introduced. But behind the polished corporate reports, the machine continued to run. Wealth still moves, shell companies still operate, private networks still exist. But now, they operate with a new sophistication, designed not to withstand investigation, but to outlast it. Power does not disappear. It evolves. And UBS remains a central node in the global web of money, influence, and strategic silence. Yet there is one more layer to this story, a layer that connects financial secrecy with political power on a global scale. Because wealth is not only preserved, it is weaponized. Part 3. If money is power, then hidden money is unaccountable power. And unaccountable power reshapes governments, societies, and the course of history. UBS is not merely a financial institution. It is an artery in the bloodstream of the global economy, carrying wealth, influence, and intent across borders with no allegiance except to profit and continuity. In the 21st century, wealth has become increasingly geopolitical. It is used to lobby governments, finance elections, acquire media networks, shape laws, and determine who rises and who falls. To understand UBS's modern significance, we must examine the intersection of wealth and statecraft. During the European debt crisis, UBS played a central advisory role in restructuring national finances. When Greece spiraled into austerity, UBS analysts advised on bond markets and investment behavior. When Italy and Spain negotiated with the European Central Bank, UBS economists shaped perspectives on risk and recovery. Banks do not simply react to crises, they interpret them. And those interpretations influence policy, investor behavior, and national outcomes. When UBS releases a report, governments pay attention. This is not conspiracy. This is influence, earned, accepted, institutionalized. But influence is never neutral. During the rise of Chinese global expansion through the Belt and Road Initiative, UBS became a strategic partner in investment flows. Chinese corporations used Swiss and European financial pathways to acquire infrastructure, ports, telecom networks, and energy stakes across Africa, Europe, and Latin America. UBS bankers helped structure deals that would reshape global trade for decades. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, sovereign wealth funds, especially from the Gulf, used UBS to diversify oil wealth into real estate, aerospace, defense technology, and Western luxury brands. Billions flowed through private investment channels shielded from public disclosure. UBS did not create these geopolitical shifts, but it facilitated them, smoothly, quietly, effectively. This is the world of modern finance. Nations are no longer shaped only by armies, elections, or treaties. They are shaped by capital flows, investment strategies, and the silent agreements between money and power. But while UBS operated on the global stage, shadows still lingered. In recent years, Investigations into UBS have continued around the world. In France, prosecutors accused UBS of encouraging large-scale tax evasion. In Germany, UBS faced inquiries regarding undeclared offshore accounts. In Hong Kong and Singapore, the bank navigated intense scrutiny over wealth management regulations. In the United States, UBS continues to operate under strict oversight after its historic 2009 settlement. Each investigation tells the same story in a different language. Where wealth concentrates, secrecy follows. And where secrecy flourishes, accountability fades. Yet UBS remains adaptable, formidable, and deeply integrated into the global system. This raises a critical question. Is UBS the architect of this system, or merely a reflection of it? The truth is more complex than guilt or innocence. UBS is a product of global capitalism, an era where wealth seeks protection, optimization, and anonymity. It exists because powerful people demand a place to store, move, and influence wealth beyond the reach of ordinary law. In this sense, UBS is not an anomaly. It is a blueprint, because it is not the only institution of its kind, it is simply one of the most visible. Behind UBS are networks of law firms, accounting firms, regulatory loopholes, investment jurisdictions, and political agreements, all designed to ensure that wealth can move freely, even when people cannot. This is not corruption in the traditional sense. It is something more subtle, more enduring, a parallel financial world. A world where borders are suggestions, laws are negotiable, and wealth does not belong to nations, but to those who control it. Most people will never see this world. They will live in the economies shaped by it, influenced by it, constrained by it, without ever knowing its architecture. But UBS exists as a doorway to that world, where silence is currency, anonymity is armor, and power leaves no fingerprints. As we conclude this journey, we return to where we began. There are places in this world where the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows, where reputations shine with polished professionalism, while below the surface, networks of influence stretch across continents. UBS is not simply a bank. It is a symbol of the age of invisible power, and the question that remains is not whether UBS is good or bad, but whether a world built on hidden wealth can ever truly be just. Because in the end, money is not just numbers on a screen. It is the ability to shape reality, and those who shape reality rarely leave traces behind.